Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Sportkite podcast. I am your host, Nick O'Neill, and I wanted to thank you for tuning in and listening. If you like what you hear here on the podcast, consider going to buymeacoffee.com/sportkite. Every little bit really does help. It is what is helping keep this podcast hosted, produced, and coming to you pretty much every week. We are in season 5. Whew, man, that's crazy to think of. I misspoke in some previous episodes and said we were still in season 4, but actually we are in season 5. So we've already passed way over 100 episodes. We're somewhere in the 110, 120 episode range. And that's really possible thanks to all of you that have stepped up and helped support us, that are continuing to listen, and that are here as we keep pushing forward and making this podcast better and better. I've gone back and I've listened to some of the old episodes and I'm like, oh man, I was so new. I was so raw. And now here we are, over 100 episodes, and we are growing. So just a little bit ago, we surpassed 17,000 downloads, which is pretty awesome. That means that we are getting some traction. We're getting folks interested in sport kiting. More and more people are listening to the podcast. They're listening to old episodes, new episodes, everything. So that's really awesome. So thank you. Thank you to every one of you. Take this as my personal thank you to you. I really do appreciate you guys listening and continuing to tune in and send us feedback and send us questions and comments and all sorts of stuff. If you have something you would like to share with us, you can send it to info@sportkite.org. That's probably the best way to reach us. You can also reach us on the Facebook page. Just look for sportkite.org on Facebook. We are growing into some other avenues. We're participating in a Discord channel. We have some WhatsApp channels going. Those are all fairly new, but we will post them onto our Facebook page, and we'll also put links to them on the sportkite.org website. For those of you that are Discord users and WhatsApp users, we'll have that there. Like I said, they're brand new. We're just building them. So if you would like to help us kind of create the community there and the infrastructure, we'd really love the help. All right. With that, let's go ahead and hop into this episode. This episode is going to be several episodes. We did a long recording of some newer Flyers and what they had to share. And I broke up this conversation into a few episodes because it was a rather long conversation. So I hope you enjoy this. But something to know, the premise of this conversation started because there was an obvious disconnect in one of the Facebook groups where we were talking about sport kiting. Something that I have seen over the years, and I just saw it in like blatant, bright neon sign, is in a way there are two eras of sport kiting. There is the previous sport kiter era where folks came up through competition. There were a ton of flyers. You had a lot of access and to individuals that could show you what to do, or that you could watch, or that you could learn from. And then competition and all of that kind of dropped off. And then we have the present era, which is almost exclusively self-taught, or they've been watching videos online. And maybe they don't have access to other flyers or events or any of that around them. Now, there are a lot more differences between these two eras, and it's kind of a broad blanket statement to say that there's only two, because there is folks that kind of fall in between, or they fall into both camps. And so just understand that I kind of used this concept of having those who came up during the grand days of sport kiting as one group, and then this group, which is the newer kiters, the folks who are completely self-taught, who haven't had access to other sport kiters. And I just wanted to give a space for them to kind of have a general conversation where they can talk about learning, some of the advice that they ran into, some of the frustrations that they've run into, and all of that. So this first episode is just kind of the introduction to this overall longer chat that we did, where they are introducing themselves and they're sharing a little bit of advice that they've received that was both useful and a piece that was not as useful. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and do stay tuned because we are going to continue on this conversation over the next few episodes. So with that, let's go ahead and hop in, and I hope you enjoy. All right. So welcome, everybody. If you haven't met me, I'm Nick O'Neill. I started Sportkite.org. If you've listened to the Sportkite podcast, you've heard my voice. There's a handful of other folks that are here on the chat that are listening in, that are also members that have been on the podcast, that they are rather expansive in the Sportkite community, and they're here just to kind of gain some knowledge, to listen in and see what all of you folks have to say. A little bit about myself. I came into the Sportkite world kind of when the experienced Sportkiters were starting to leave. So there was a little bit of a disconnect between myself and them, and trying to learn and trying to get more information. And that's changed a little bit with time because I've been very, very actively involved on the kite field, but it is still something that is very near and dear to my heart, is the new folks coming to kiting, and very specifically sport kiting, and their experiences, how they're learning, and how we can bridge those gaps. So that is part of the reason we separated these two groups out for this chat, is so that all of you group one folks that are newer to kite flying, or potentially have not been super involved in the industry, or have had a lot of people around you, that this is a space for you guys to share and talk about your experiences. And then hopefully with group two, I can get some of their information, and then we can start bridging some of these gaps and start and help everybody kind of learn and fly and do things better. Yay! So with that, we'll kind of go around the virtual table. And I'll have y'all, if you could introduce yourself, and then tell me, let's see, what's a good question? How about when you started flying, were you able to find someone to help you, or did you do this all on your own? So, who wants to start? I'll just randomly pick people.
I'll start. I'll go.
Go ahead. Is that you, Keith? Sorry.
This is Lou.
Oh, Lou. There we go. Perfect. Go ahead.
So I started kiting probably about 10 years ago, and it was purely just an go to the beach, and I saw a dual line kite, and I thought, oh, that looks like that'd be a lot of fun. So grabbed that, and years later, then watching YouTube videos, got into quad kites because I thought, okay, that looks even cooler. I want to do that. Since I had this dual line thing flying around in circles for a while, it'll be easy to jump into 4 lines, and then I can go backwards and all kind of cool stuff. And grabbed that for a few days and realized that was terrible. That doesn't work like that at all. And went back to the dual line for a while until I watched a bunch of more YouTube videos, because I would only fly when I went to the beach, because my hometown in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, it does not have the smooth, nice wind most of the time. So at my level, at least at that point, it just didn't seem like I could get into the air the same as at the beach.
Awesome. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'd love to, if that works.
Yeah, Angus, go ahead.
That's great. I was jumping because it's morning here and I have to take my mum to the train station shortly, so I'll take this opportunity to speak. So I started flying 4 years ago now, during COVID. we were living on a farm out in the middle of nowhere. We had not very much except for a lot of wind. And yeah, I had fond memories as a kid of flying a kite. I hadn't done it for so long, and I thought, yeah, that could be a fun thing to try doing again. And yeah, as everyone knows, one leads to many, many more. And during COVID, I had this money that I wasn't spending at the pub anymore. So I bought my first kite, and that exploded. And suddenly I had upwards of 100 kites that I had collected because I discovered that secondhand kite buying was a thing. But during that, I guess there was no one else around me flying kites, and I just had this incredible drive to try flying as many different types of kites as I could, and that's really what led to that explosion of collecting. But so yeah, I guess the question was, did I have that support? Not physically, but online, yes. And I was so grateful at that time to find the different Facebook groups and to share and learn from people that way, and make connections with people. Many of us know Gerald Trotman, and he has been, quite an enabler when it comes to my kite collection, but also just a great source of knowledge. And other people too. Devon, I've spoken to separately, and other people in the group. I've really appreciated the connections that I've been able to make online, even though here in Australia I'm not surrounded by many other flyers. So yeah, really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the group here. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Katrina, was that you?
Sure, that's me. Okay, I'm Katrina. I'm one of the ones that I feel like I've been flying forever, but it has not actually been. It's been since 2006. And I had all the advantages, right? Because I started flying at Whiskey. I mean, what can I complain about, right? But I stupidly tried to do it all on my own for years, partly because I had two little kids at the time. I literally had a baby and a toddler, but there were all those kite flyers out there, and I was too scared to talk to them. Or when I'd talk to them, I'd ask them a question, and they'd give me the answer, and then that was it, and I'd walk away and go fly over there. So I vividly remember what it is to be a beginner. So I'm with you, even though it was a while back.
Yeah, Katrina, I think, falls into the same group of a handful of folks that are going to be on this call that are like the 1.5s, right? So they still very much remember what that feels like. So who's next? Keith, I see your hand raised.
Yep. Hey, Nick. So I first started flying in 91 with a Peter Powell diamond, big diamond kite. But a lot like Lewis talked about, I was really kind of contained to just flying on the beach during vacation. So for about the first 20 years, we were talking about 2 weeks of flying at most, and gradually worked my way up. I think my first big kite purchase would have been a Fanatic in like 94 or 95. But in the last 10 years, I've gotten a lot more time on the beach. I'm now retired. I live at the beach. And 3 years ago, a buddy of mine, my flying partner, we opened a little business to teach people how to fly. The only problem is that I'm not a trick flyer. So I'm teaching them basics, how to get the kite up, how to maneuver it, how to feel comfortable and all of that. So, and last year was the first time I really saw another stunt flyer. So I've been really isolated in that regard. I feel like maybe I've been in the outback of Australia with Angus. I don't know, but it's been pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And I'm out on Cape Cod, by the way. That's where I am. So looking forward to learning.
All right. Michael?
So I got into kites due to my dad. Like, we went to a kite thing that my school did back in like elementary school. I grew up down by Corpus Christi, Texas, right off the Gulf. Ideal conditions for learning to fly, all of that. There was just nobody around. Like, there was no one to do stunt kites with, nothing. So entirely like self-taught. Just, I can get a kite up, I can land, I can do stuff like that. But recently, like in the past couple of years, I've found, hey, there's so much online for like how to do all this stuff. And now I live in a state that has like no wind. So I get to fly once in a blue moon, trying to fix that, but yeah, fun times.
You know that pain. All right, who's next? You know. I just saw your hand go up.
All right. My name is Ivo Petrov. I live in New Jersey. I started flying less than 4 years ago, towards the end of 2020. Bought the Prism Kite, went to vacation. Of course, there was no wind for it. I was lucky that on Cape Cod there was a kite shop, so I ran out and bought everything that says low wind on it. They didn't apply either. So for the first 4 or 5 months, I was trying to go everything out of internet in videos and chats. Then I was extremely lucky to be able to go to the Lions Festival and met people like Devin and John McCracken and other people who welcomed me into the community and answered all my stupid questions. So thank you so much for that. There's a lot of things that we can talk after that of what I see that I would like to have more or to have seen. I try to fly as much as possible and read and chat and geek with everyone that wants to. So I'm super excited for the opportunity to share what we know and what we're missing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ivo, a little bit later, I'm going to ask you to share your experience on Sportkite Camp. Because you yourself and I believe one other person on the chat, I'm trying to look through the list, where I think it was James was there as newbie, quote unquote newbies. So let's see, who else wants to go? Brianna or Breezy?
Hi, everybody. So I'm probably a new face to most of you. My name's Brianna or Breezy. I am actually the new director for the World Kite Museum, as well as the director for WSCIF this year. I will be honest, I do not have a lot of kite background. I'm kind of a clean slate, but what I do have is a lot of museum as well as event planning background. So with that, I'm trying to be a sponge and learn as much as I possibly can about the kite community. And I've been very fortunate to be welcomed with pretty open arms. So my hope is that I get to hear every end of the spectrum and learn from you as we go. Oops.
By the way, the World Kite Museum and WSCIF just created a new Facebook page. Go find them, like and follow. They're doing a big revamp, so you might want to kind of follow along with what they're doing. Who's next? Two hands up. Now I see one. Austin? Austin, you might be on mute.
Devin can go first.
Oh, okay. Devin? Devin
Oh,
is
boy.
also one of our Sportkite podcast members and experienced folks. So, Devin?
Well, hello, friends. Sorry if I sound like I'm getting run over by a car. I'm recovering from kind of a weird bug. But so I have to kind of hit this in two categories, and I'll try to keep them concise. When I started, I was 4 and immediately had access to great flyers because I kind of accidentally stumbled across Grand Haven and lived right by John and Marianne, which is Kites and Fun Things, and Sky Shark and Skyburner. But the disconnect for me was that I was absolutely just hell-bent on tricking and doing all this other stuff, but I was way too small to have access to any kind of trick kite. So when I started, I was starting on a stacker, which if you try to axle it, it just falls out of the sky, or a Premier Cyclone, which is basically a Peter Powell copy with lower grade fiberglass and all this other stuff. Which, fun fact, you can put it on its back and it looks hilarious. Figured that out by accident. So to learn tricking, I didn't really have any resources, but I had a lot of resources of like, what to do to keep a kite in the air, fundamentals. And I came across Dodd's flight school, his second one, tricks, where he had a hot pepper inside on this little mount, and he was turning it around slowly and explaining what was going on. And I got a hold of a Prism Micron, which at that point was held together by rubber bands. And I figured, all right, well, if that's held together by rubber bands, I may as well hold it to something else with rubber bands. So I made a Connects mount that Dodd had, and I connected it all with as many rubber bands as I could, and I put 2 little lines on it, and that's how I learned how to trick. It was in the winters. I sat there probably 4 feet away from the kite. Like at that point, I was 5, to figure out what the bridle's doing, how the kite's moving, and what to do. I'd never learned how to trick on the field. So kind of a strange circumstance, but creative solutions can be fun sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Devin. Austin?
I'm Austin. Like Katrina, I also started at Whiskiff. The funny thing for me is that I've actually been to Whiskiff many times. As a kid, that was like my family tradition to go there every year since I lived in Washington. But I didn't really get into it until 3 years ago. And I was doing it alone until last year when I met a bunch of you. So definitely grateful for that.
Yeah, I think you actually ended up on a photo on the Prism's social pages.
I saw that.
Yeah, sitting on the edge of the field, the competition field. And the reason I know that is because I took the photo. So
I had just bought the Quantum the day before.
yeah, it looked shiny and new. So I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, I'm gonna take that and send that to Prism for their socials.
I
So
just left it up because at that time, since it was new, I was so slow to put it together and take it apart.
you just left it all together. All right. Brian and Sarah, I see you guys on the list.
I'll introduce because I'm the beginner. So I've been around my husband Brian, who's been actively flying sport kites since he started about 10 years ago, more or less. He had some as a kid. He had like he'll introduce himself. Anyway, so he invited me to go with him this year. And since there's gonna be so many quad line flyers and I'll have a chance to fly teams, I'd like to know how to do something. So we've been out flying 3 weekends now. So I've flown a little bit over the years, like I could do the up and down and the side to side, but now I'm starting to try to do the upside down stuff. So I have access to a great kite flyer, and I have all his equipment, which is nice because he has the huge bag. So I don't own any kites other than a iFlight, but we've been working on quads so that hopefully when I get to Whiskiff in August and see some of you in person, that I will be able to do something other than just sit on the sidelines. That's me.
Yeah, please come by the Sportkite camp.
Oh, Brian will be living there, and I'll be by him, so
Awesome.
I'll probably see a lot of you.
Yes, yeah. For everybody, if you do come to Whiskiff, please come by the Sportkite camp. We're having a handful of fireside chats like we did last year, but this year is a little bit more focused on new folks, on introducing some new perspectives and stuff like that. We will have one member from the USA Sportkite team and one member from the Canadian Sportkite team sharing their experience as brand new people who all of a sudden were competing on the world stage for their very, very first competition. So I'm excited to have both of them, and then we'll have some of the other USA team members. I believe Katrina is going to be there. Spence Watson, Paul DeBacher, Scott Weeder. We'll just be missing Crystal Wilder and Brett Marshall. So, all right, Brian.
Sorry, Brian. No, you're fine. You gotta promote yourself. Brian Wagstaff. I'm not in the beginner camp anymore, but I'm also not in the advanced camp yet, so I'm kind of transitioning between them. I did not have anyone starting out, and so I was at first I was just me. There were only a few video tutorials out there. There wasn't very much, and I was like, I need help, and I would video myself and post it online and say, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing wrong or right. Just I need help, and that has been my case for a few years. Um, I travel 8, 10 more hours to get to an event so that I can have an hour of shared time with somebody. Just desperate looking for people, but now I'm starting to get people where they're like, "Hey, we need somebody to uh, fly," and I'm like, "I guess I can fly. I mean, I'm not nobody, but I can do it." They had needed somebody to call at an event, and I'm like, I have that capacity. I'm not good, but that's a thing I can do. So I'm not sure where I fit at the moment. I'm looking for ways to grow and ways to get better.
Thank you. James, you are currently on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I've been playing around with this thing. I'm still like too far away, but I got the camera like a foot from my face at this point. So I don't know. I don't want to put it any closer. But I got a cool background now. Y'all can see.
Nice.
You can't see my arm. There's my arm. Well, it's one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm the oldest beginner probably in the entire sport. Because I've been a beginner level for about 2 decades now. But this is where I belong, I guess. I got introduced to the sport kites when I was about 10 years old. This would be early 90s. I just happened to see it on television, believe it or not. I guess it was ESPN. They had a sport kite competition that was aired on TV, and it blew my mind. At the time, I was flying single line kites. And actually, one of the most expensive toys I had growing up, I begged for, was a $30 nylon Delta kite that was about, it was at least 4 feet wide, if not 5 feet wingspan, and it was $30. And my mom agreed to purchase it. I don't know how or why, but I flew the crap out of that thing till I got it about 1,000 feet out on the line, and it winds picked up and it broke the line and just flew off into the distance, and until I couldn't see it no more, it kept flying. But as far as the sport kites, I took a trip. Is a couple of years after that, we took a trip as a family out to San Francisco, and I stumbled upon a kite store. It's still there, still in business. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head right now, but it's on at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, and I saw dual line kites on display, and I picked up a 1996 Prism catalog, which I studied from cover to cover for years. I still didn't get a kite until about my early 20s. I was in a Cabela's sporting store, and at that time they had a deal with Prism. I bought an E2, so it took me from discovering sport kites to actually having one. Took me about 13 years, and then I bought a handful of kites at that time, including that Eclipse that's on. I'm sorry, Elixir that's on the background there. I bought that within the next year or two after buying the E2, and I did it I flew pretty a lot for the next 5 years or so, and then I just put it away. And then it wasn't until about 2 years ago I got the kites back out and started poking around on the internet, found the Sport Kite group on Facebook, and the Sport Kite camp, thanks to Nick. That was I went there, and I had a blast. That was just a little over a year ago. That was great. I met Evo and a bunch of other great people out there. It really changed my I don't know, I don't want to say changed my life, but it definitely, I was really happy to have been treated so much like family by these people that are like really big in this sport or hobby, whatever you want to call it. They treated me like family, and it was just mind blowing to me. I had a great time. I haven't been flying much. It's actually probably been close to 2 months since I was flying. And I just been busy with other things in life. But my skill level's about the same for the past 15 years. I haven't got better. I still don't think I'm as good as I was when I stopped flying back in the 2000s. So that's where I am now. Just hadn't had a lot of time to focus on it. So hopefully that'll change in the later half of this year. But I've had a lot of stuff going on. But that's all I got to say.
Yep. Yeah. And again, thanks, James, for coming to Sportkite Camp. I'll talk a little bit more about Sportkite Camp a little bit later, and would definitely love to have both your guys' feedback as newbies that came to it. Matt, did I see your hand up? You might be on mute. Oh, hit that unmute button real quick. All right, try now. Nope, I can't hear you. Okay, while you play around with that, let me go to who is next on the alphabet. John McCracken, who is another one of the experienced flyers, has been on the podcast. You guys have probably seen them as paired up with Devin as Canvas Kite Designs. So John.
Yes, here I am. I have, like Nick said, I'm not in the beginner situation. I kind of on the same path as Devin a little bit. I got my first kite from John and Marianne Trimple at Kites and Fun Things, and learned to fly alongside with John. So I kind of was lucky and jumped straight into a pretty well established and accomplished kite club in Michigan, but wanted to learn the tricking side of things and did a lot of that on my own, and progressed reasonably well through it, and then kind of left the sport for a while, then came back, and Devin and I are now doing our thing, and we went to high school together. Well, we went to the same high school years and years apart, but found each other, and now we're growing the way we're growing, and flying is less frequent for me now with the building aspect of it. I tend to build more than I fly, but still get out to the festivals that I can and do demos and all the fun things.
Thanks, John. Matt, you want to try your mic again?
All right, I think we got it.
There we go. Yay.
Different app had control of it, so we got yeah, so I got my first stunt kite 3 years ago for Father's Day, and kind of thought I'd go that route of the frame stunt kites, but got really pretty nice one, a custom built one just a few months later. But I was just having trouble learning. I'd watch the videos, it wouldn't work out. I wasn't sure, like, is it my timing? Is it the wind kite combination? Did I reassemble it incorrectly or something? And I was still having fun with just like a stunt foil with a big long tail, and kids would come play with it and stuff and have a good time. And then I learned how to anchor multiple single line kites. And so that's just kind of what I gravitated towards, because it was a little bit easier. And I'm in Arizona. There's not a lot of events here. I'd go to an event, I'd be the most experienced flyer. Actually, yesterday was the first day I got with some more experienced flyer. I met Austin yesterday in California, went out there to a small event. So I'm feeling a little more motivated to get back to learning. Got to use a few different kites I've never got to experiment with before, so good to see this group.
Awesome, thank you. And then next up, actually, Max, if you're ready, just a little break in before you say anything is Max is also hopefully coming to Whiskiff and will be hopefully doing a fireside chat at Sportkite Camp. So again, this is someone else that is more on the newer side, but he has started the LA kite scene and has really been kind of pushing things there. So by the way, any of you that can't come to Whiskiff, we do record those fireside chats, so you can go back and listen to them and get all the show notes and watch the videos and stuff like that. So you can still be a part of it. All right, Max.
Sure. Yeah, so I first started flying sometime in the 90s. There was a kite shop that named Windborne Kites in Monterey area. And we happened to go in there and pick up a kite and just sort of, I think it was a Prism. No, it might not have been a Prism. It might have been a Beetle even, or something else. But yeah, picked up a kite there and tried it out on the beach. Didn't really live that close to the beach. But eventually I got a hold of some sort of Prism kite around then from them as well, and just watched the VHS that came with it over and over again and tried to learn things from it and basically just struggled quite a bit. You know, because I wasn't going to the beach that often, but we would go occasionally. And then kind of took a break for 10 years or a little longer, 15 years or so, and then picked it up again. I watched the later Prism video that came out. I think that was Freestyle Pilot at that point, and watched that over and over again. Tried to learn the things in that video, and maybe took one or two things away. Spent some time on the Gone with the Wind forum, just kind of checking things out. And the first interaction I had with like actual kite people was messaging people from the forum and asking them if they wanted to fly. So I met up with a few people in California and just kind of like we learned one thing from each other and shared, and that was pretty much the journey there.
Awesome. I really do hope you can get to Whiskiff and we can kind of really pull apart your whole creation of the LA kite scene, or recreation of the LA kite scene and what you're doing there. So, because from a third party perspective, it looks so welcoming and inviting, and I really appreciate everything you're doing down there. And so,
awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Jason, I saw you just joined. Would you care to introduce yourself and let us know when you started? Did you do it by yourself, or did you find people around you, or you are on mute, so you're going to have to unmute. Uh-oh. I think Jason dropped off accidentally. All right. So I'll wait for Jason to join back in. And I also believe we have someone calling in that is most likely Scott Weeder. Scott, you may have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's me, Scott Weeder. I've been flying kites for a long time. Hi, Nick. Thanks for doing this. This is great. It's pretty amazing to hear all these stories in such a comforter, easy. It's like a phone call for me, so it's really cool. Thank you for this. This is great. I'll just go back to my beginning. I saw kites. I bought kites, and I didn't fly. I tried to fly, but never really could. And then I saw an old friend on a field. He was flying a really nice kite, and then he got to talking to me and told me where the kiters met. And I went there and I fellowshipped. It was right on the, Atlantic Ocean in Newport, Rhode Island, not Newport Beach, Newport, Rhode Island. So it was was really full bore. There were teams practicing for World Cup. There were sport kite competitions once a year. So I really got a good glimpse into good flying. So here I am, pretty much 30 years later, and I'm still digging it. Kites to music is the thing. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. I'm sure it'll come up at some point through the conversation that we have today. This is a conversation that is very near and dear, not only to my heart, but the conversation that I had with Scott about this particular thing, and Katrina was privy to that, of how powerful it is for the new people coming on the field to feel that fellowship and that approach. So I really, really appreciate that they have joined us here. So, Jason, I see you are back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm internet not very good. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Would you
I
care
found
to?
you guys. I'm glad I'm listening.
Awesome. Would you care to introduce yourself and then also say when you started, were you by
Sure.
yourself? Did you find a group around you?
Well, first time I started, I was probably 12 or 13. My mom took me down to San Diego and I saw a stacked kite. And we walked into the kite store and she bought me my first dual line, which was a sport kite. It was a rainbow sport kite. It was a diamond framed, aluminum framed kite, but it was $30 at the time. So she bought me one and didn't really fly like a sport kite. And I never was able to buy another one because I was a kid. And then eventually I started flying by myself. And I got a $30 kite, learned how to sew it back together every time I crashed it. We had rotary phones. We didn't have internet. It was you just go out when it was windy, and the better the wind, the better, because I was just flying at the park. And then I got another kite, and about when I finally got a job and had my own money, I bought a real sport kite and still kept working into it, but it was always flying solo. And then years went past and COVID came by and you start cleaning out stuff and you're like, oh, there's my kite. It's in the back of the closet. And I get back in and I went back down to San Diego. I brought my kite that I bought there, 10 years ago. And I went back in the same kite store. I'm like, what do you have that's new? And I think I bought a Tantrum. That was my first kite. And I got a 75-foot tail and wow, just feel the energy of the wind. That that just got me all back into it. And then it gave me a lot of like feedback from just going out and do something to get out of myself and just go fly something because you don't need anybody to fly a kite. So that was really good for me. And then yeah, just to meet with other people has been really good. I realized once I went to my first festival, I didn't know anything. It seemed like everybody knew each other, but they didn't. But it seemed they're so good, and I felt like I was out of place. But I made one friend my first festival, and a year later, I made two friends, and then now I'm Jason Mojica Kites.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think I got everybody. Is that everybody that's been on the call? Okay. I kind of want to segue from what you just said and also something Katrina referenced in kind of their comment about getting started. And this is just a general open, so I will ask if you want to say something. There's a little raise your hand function. That way we don't talk over each other. So if you can hit that little hand sign at the bottom, it'll pop up and then I'll try to call people. So my question for everybody is when you approached someone to learn more, either on the field or digitally, like if we did it in a group chat or in one of the Facebook groups, what was a bit of feedback that was helpful for you that like really resonated, and what was some feedback that didn't resonate? And I'll start for myself just to kind of help get this started. Is feedback for me that really kind of helped was to be patient. To be patient and to always be walking. When I first started learning sport kites, specifically dual line kites, I was completely self-taught, and I was in Colorado, which is just a shitty place to try and fly. And I was trying and I was trying and it was not making sense and I couldn't make it work. And having someone tell me that actually my legs moving across the field and gaining and taking distance on the field was going to make a bigger impact really helped kind of change what I was doing. I still sucked at flying, but it really did kind of get me past that first obstacle and make it less frustrating and a little bit more fun. The bit of feedback that has always frustrated me was folks saying, oh, well, you just need to go fly with other people. And they'll teach you. And the reason that that frustrated me is because where I was at the time, there was no other people. And so you're telling me to do the impossible thing in order to achieve the thing I wanted. And everyone was like, well, that's how I learned. And I'm like, well, that's great. You live at the beach. I live in Colorado. And there's nobody here that flies like that. And they're like, oh, go watch these old movies. And I'm like, okay, like that, great. So yeah, I see 2 hands up. So who wants to go first? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Angus or Lewis? Angus, you go first. So what is a bit of feedback that was helpful and one that wasn't?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. So feedback that was helpful. This is going back to the very beginning when I was so excited to share videos online, and I was showing off my first figure eight that I had completed, and I remember getting the feedback, oh, that's not the way that we generally do figure eights, because I was going up at the sides and down through the middle, and I thought, what? There's an accepted way to do figure eights, but then it was explained to me, no, if you fly up in the middle, that's the center of the wind window, and then you'll get up and you can go down and use gravity to take you down at the sides, and that was just something, taking that on board and realizing, these tiny details in the way that you fly could really make a difference. And my figure eights got so much better after that, and that was just, obviously the beginning of the kind of feedback that I received. So that was helpful for me, because I'm going to say the same piece of frustrating feedback that I got was to either fly with other people, which I couldn't do either because I'm in the middle of nowhere. You need to watch another one. Sorry. Or to watch videos, and I'm someone who doesn't I can't learn from watching videos, unfortunately, which is tricky in a place where I don't have other flyers either. And so that actually has led me to the kind of kite flying that I'm really into now, which is multiple kite flying, where I'm flying 2 or trying to get to 3 kites on handles, because I'm really struggling to grasp the technicalities of trick flying through videos, and I don't have anyone really here to show me. So that's what's led me to the other type of flying, which I absolutely love. And so that's the way that I've been able to turn that frustration into something else. Anyway, thanks.
Awesome. Lewis.
Yeah, so my positive and negative are both around the same topic, which was when I was first getting into a quad kite, specifically. I was the store was a Kitty Hawk Kites on Outer Banks, which at the time was the only store that I ever knew of. And I walked in there and I'm looking, and they sold one kind of kite. They had revolutions all the way. And I thought, oh, okay, this is what I see everybody fly. This must be it. And it took years to find out that there were so many different brands. So where I'm going with this is I was very, and still to this day, there's so many camps of the different brands of kites, and it's so frustrating when you're a beginner trying to wade through that. Like, oh, I bought a Revolution. This is never going to work. It's going to be terrible. And oh, it has springs on it. This is never going to fly. That was a piece of garbage. And I think as a beginner, it's important to have better feedback that they all can fly. So you got to get in the air and learn some things. But to have harsh feedback from one brand to the other, I think that was my biggest negative, trying to wade through that. And along those lines, on a positive note, the first person that I met was Fletcher. If anybody knows him around East Coast, he was doing a demo down in Outer Banks, and I happened to walk up to him, had no idea who he was, but I was brave enough to ask a couple questions. And I said, "Hey, I have this Revolution kite. Would you just fly it for a second?" And that was the most important thing, to watch that he could take that kite that I couldn't do much with and fly that thing as good as any kite that he was flying there that day. So to have the feedback, just to watch somebody, to know your kite can do it, you just can't do it yet. And I think that was important to me.
Yep. I've definitely had the same, where physically seeing someone do something with my
it
kite
ain't a fucking boat.
will massively change, like, oh, okay, now I know it's possible, right?
Yep.
Evo, and then James.
Okay, so I have several positives, and because I'm very hard on myself, there's probably a lot of negatives that came from my way of looking into this, and not necessarily as a kiting community. But like, as a chronological order, probably the first positive feedback that I got was actually from Lam Hawk. I bought one of his kites on from a fellow flyer from New Jersey, and called him up, and we started chatting. So he had a very interesting way of explaining like kite maneuvers, or like, let's say, hand inputs in a completely non-kite related way. So that was an interesting, that's a whole story by itself, but the ability to. Did I just muted myself probably? Or
Oops. Yep. You still there?
yes.
Okay.
I don't know what was the last thing that you heard, but I was sharing like some of the non-kiting explanation. That was the first positive that I heard. But really, what opened things for me was when I went at Lion and had a session with Devin, and he was the first one who explained, or he just opened my eyes that actually the kite design, the bridle, the inputs, you are not necessarily controlling the whole kite itself. You are, by affecting the bridle and by different positions of the kite, and when you're into this, you're actually making the kite do what you want by looking at the bridle and what it does with the kite. So that's that to me like open up the whole world of, well, different kites. They have different bridles. They're made in a different way. So what works in one kite may not work onto another. So this was a very, like, I'm a technical person and I like to know why it happens, what it happens. So this really helped me like look at the kiting in a, like, from a different world and from a different perspective. And of course, like, one of the negatives, what I heard, don't worry, keep practicing, it will come. And I was like, no, but I want to know how, and I want to do it now. And indeed, there are some stuff that like, I spent so much time learning the half axel cascade, and at the beginning was just difficult, and with time, with more practice, you hit those timing much more comfortably. So unfortunately, that was a good feedback, but I felt that it was very negative or very frustrating when I first got it.
James? Up, you're on mute, love. There we go.
I turned my hand down too. Okay. The Now it's been too long. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, having somebody with experience fly your kites is mind blowing. And also not just that, but the reciprocal of having, like, Paul gave me a kite to fly out at the sport kite camp. It was the level 1 max, I think. And I flew that thing for a couple hours, and he just gave it to me. He just walked away. Like, it's like, I was okay. And that was a lot of fun, just playing with other people's toys. And then I had people take my kites and fly them, and I really enjoyed that. I can tell you, actually, the sport kite camp wasn't the first thing I've ever done. I did something. There's a group around the Carolinas I went to in the 2000s, and when I got there, I felt like I was by myself. Nobody talked to me. I left, and I never came back, and that kept me away for a decade. And definitely, that happens in the car shows too. You can go to a car show and not talk to anybody, and there's 1,000 people there. It's very important to break the ice with people, start conversations, meet and greet, and share. That's going to bring people back and bring people in. If you don't do that, then you could do like what happened to me. I literally just went off by myself for a long time because of that first experience. I felt like I wasn't welcome. But then now with the sport kite camp, it was as far on the other side of the spectrum as you could get. I was welcomed with open arms by everybody. So experiences vary, but if nobody's talking to you, well, go out and start talking to people. That's probably the best thing to say.
Oh, Michael.
All right. So my positive, I'm like fairly new to the Facebook group, like within the past like 2 months, 3 months, I found it. What I'm seeing is just people are wealths of information. Like they will just give you way too much information. Like, and it's super overwhelming at times, but that's a good thing for me. I love, like, hey, give me all the information. And that kind of flows into my negative where it's a lot. And if you're new and just like me, I haven't even figured out snap stalls. Like I'm trying snap stalls and ground recoveries. And I'm just like, oh, this is a lot. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Anyone else have some good and bad feedback they care to share?
Can I jump in super quick?
Who is it? I think that's
Devin.
Devin. Yeah, go for it, Devin.
It doesn't really have much to do with kites, and it's only been recent. And I feel like an idiot for not have thought of this. No, there's another way to feel like an idiot. I feel like an idiot for not have even like kind of just like spent time thinking about this before. But this idea of like, oh, go out and practice, oh, it'll come in time, blah 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 blah. Like, not the most encouraging thing to hear. And I heard that a ton when I was a kid too, but also like as a kid, like I'm trying to learn a 540 on a micron here, folks. Like with all the rubber bands attached to it from the Connects mount. Like it's like not the most logical thing. But thinking about how to practice, like, oh, are you just doing it over and over again, expecting the same result? What kinds of things are you trying to do? Like, do you have a strategy? Like, there's so much more than just going out and doing it than is practicing. Like, do you know how to practice? Like, all of these things. And like, strangely enough, had one of my freshmen not walked into the horn studio and been like, why are we practicing endurance exercises by playing them over and over again? I was like, I don't know. Why do you think that's that way? And he goes, well, if we're constantly hitting a wall, this isn't like what we were doing in lessons. Like this was in his prep trying to get through a Tchaikovsky symphony. He's like, I feel like I'm hitting the same wall every time. That clearly means I'm not approaching this the right way. Maybe endurance has to do with how to make something easier and therefore lasting longer. And it was like, well, yeah, there you go. Like, and it was like, oh God, like, why didn't I think about that for kites? Like, because we talk about troubleshooting things all the time, but I feel like an idiot for not bringing up to some beginner, like, what kind of strategy do you have in your practice? This is me kind of hitting something about, frustrating on the teaching side, because I should have brought it up a long time ago. I just never connected the two. We talk about things, like Eva and I have talked until our jaws fall off about this kind of stuff, but putting like a big, like wrapping paper on it in a nice little box and just being like, here you go. Why don't you try to think of it this way? It's not necessarily flying, it's getting strategic. Could have been very useful many years ago.
Yep. You have just hit a huge nail on the head for me. Because for those of you that don't know, and I know some of the experienced folks here have heard me talk about it ad nauseum. I'm a coach in a sport for something else. Yeah, and this is something we do all the time, right? And one of the things that's massively revolutionized my style of coaching and how I teach and all of that is engaging people in their own learning. I'm not just telling them to go do something. I am actively saying, why would you think like this is something we need to learn, or what would you think could help you learn this skill, right? And to give everyone credit here, that is actually a major cultural shift that has happened in the past few decades. That's not necessarily how we all used to learn. That is now the way that folks are learning. So with that, I'm going to go through the list. I saw Katrina's hand. Oh, yep. Katrina, turn off mute.
Okay. I'm forgetting how to use the internet, apparently. Okay. Hey, Devin said a major point of mine, which is just never tell somebody to just keep practicing. It's just such a horrible message to receive. It's like, oh, okay, I'll just keep practicing. And for one thing, you might be practicing the wrong thing. You might be doing a maneuver completely wrong, and you're just getting muscle memory for the wrong thing. So yeah, that was the worst advice I ever got, was just keep practicing with a smile. Like it's dismissive. It just says bye. Yeah. So so here's what I'm thinking. The best advice that I've gotten, and also probably that I've given, is unsolicited. As much as we hate that, right? Nobody wants unsolicited advice, right? That's horrible. But if somebody gives you unsolicited advice, it means they've been kind of sitting back and they've been watching, and they see there's this thing, and that they can see they could help you with this. Like, if you did this at this point, it would help you a lot. So that if somebody comes up to you with that unsolicited advice, it might be really good advice. So even though you might not want to hear it, try to listen. And I would say also think about who's giving you the advice. Do they know what they're doing? So ask for advice when you need it, but maybe even more than asking for it, ask if you can watch somebody. Like, say, I'm doing 180s and my kite drops every time. And you could ask somebody, like, how do you do it? I see your 180s are perfect. And if you ask me, I'm going to say, well, I don't know. I just do it. I can't help you. I can't give you an answer. But if somebody says, so could I just watch your hands? Because you do it really slowly, and I'm going to do it. And they can see it. I can't tell you what I'm doing. So that's true of a lot of us. When you've been doing it a while, we know how to do it, but we don't necessarily know what we're doing so that we can tell you. And also sometimes it's useful to help somebody that has just picked up a skill. They have just gone through this. They just had to figure out, oh, and I figured out if I just do my pinky like this and just, and you ask me, like, I've been flying 10 years longer than them, but I couldn't have told them that, right? So yeah, those are my pearls of wisdom for the moment. I'm going to mute now.
Okay. Austin?
Actually, I'd like to give a shout out to Devin. He offered me a bunch of very useful advice, and he's really good at explaining things. I can't remember exactly what it is, but he's just good at explaining to noobs like me. And the other thing that was super helpful was actually getting to fly with Max. So I shout out to him too. Just watching his hand movements and then having him watch my hand movements was very useful for me.
Ooh, I'm gonna put a pin in that watching hand movements thing because that kind of goes into the next question. But I am certain there's other people that want to share their best and worst feedback. So, Michael.
I just wanted to cut in real quick, and just put something out there for whoever like makes videos and stuff. Hand movement video, really nice. Please do that. That's it.
Yeah. Funnily enough, that's actually part of the next question. So is there anyone else that wants to share the best bit of feedback that they've had and maybe the worst bit of feedback that they've had? Jason, you're on mute though. Make sure you hit the.
Hello?
Mhm.
You hear me?
I got you.
All right. Well, the first time I went to a festival after I've been flying kites for a year and a half, I was really enjoying flying kites. I found out there was a festival local, and I just felt so intimidated to walk up and talk to some of these people because it seemed like they've all known each other for years and years and years because they're just so good at what they do. And I really was looking at the sport trick kites because I didn't really fly those. I flew a lot of prism stuff and mainly just did loops and normal flying. I started buying neutrino stacks because I've always wanted to fly a stacked kite. And after I left that party, I talked to one person. And he told me it wasn't a competition. It's everybody's out there just to enjoy flying kites. And that let me go home and realize that it wasn't I knew there was competitions back in the 90s, but I really wasn't a part of that. But when I came to the event, I assumed there was still competitions because everybody was so good, everybody was so just tight. They were flying in formations and with these kites that I've never seen before. And I ordered a couple trick kites, and I didn't realize it was going to take a few months before I got these kites. But I don't think if somebody would have, because I'm really not somebody that went out and talked to people and really expressed myself, because I thought I knew what kites were until I went to my first kite thing, and I felt so scared. I just kind of sat there. The wind wasn't blowing 8 miles an hour to fly a kite that I'm normal flying, and everyone's flying kites all day long, which I guess they're ultralights. Now I understand. And I don't think if somebody would have talked to me and expressed that it's not a competition, it's just the fun of flying kites, that I would still be doing what I'm doing today. And that's when I want to. Sometimes it just takes one person.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm making sure my mic's not on mute before I go check the next. Keith.
Yeah, I really don't have any experience of getting any feedback because I haven't flown in front of anybody really. The closest I got was last year at Rhode Island. Mike D was there. I'm hoping to get back there this summer, but I am looking forward to getting some feedback in the fall because I will attend Sportkite camp up in New Hampshire. So hopefully somebody can cure my ills or at least get me started on.
Yes, you will. You will gladly be welcomed there. I know Jesse Capston and Paul will be there as the experienced flyers, and I'm sure there'll be other experienced flyers attending.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it'll be a lot of fun.
All right. So a big thank you to everyone that was in this first group and that shared their insight and their personal experiences. I really, really do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed listening to it, and maybe you learned something, whether you were in this group that joined us for the chat, or maybe you're just listening to this for the first time, or maybe you're an experienced person and you're listening to this. Maybe it's changing the way you look at things. If you have any of that insight, we'd love to hear it. And hope you do stay tuned for the future episodes. The next few episodes are going to be continuing on with this conversation. Like I said, they're longer episodes. This was almost a 3-hour conversation that we had with newbies, and I want to share as much of it as I can with all of you. So following that, we will do a handful of other episodes about some Sportkite stuff that's happening, and then we're going to follow it up with what was group 2, and that is the experienced kite flyers that kind of come from that first era of sport kiting, where they had access to people, access to events. They had a little bit different learning experience when it comes to sport kiting, and we're going to have a chat with them. We'll share all of our insight from that in subsequent episodes, so do stay tuned. And if you haven't, go to sportkite.org on Facebook, give us a like and a follow. We're also on Instagram, we're on Threads, we're on TikTok, we're on all the socials. And we do have that Discord and that WhatsApp groups getting set up. So if you're interested in joining that, go check it out. You can find links to it on the sportkite.org website. Those are managed kind of by our sister site, Fortuna Found, but there is a heavy emphasis on sport kiting. So if that's your jam, come on over, jump in the pool with us, help us build what we've got going on there. Yeah. All right. So I will see all of you out on the kite field. I hear the wind is blowing, so I'm going to head out and hopefully get some time on the line. All right. I'll see you later.